welcome to the Wizard of Radical Self-Respect. My name is Jared Mello. Today, I want to go over my philosophy on narcissism. A lot of people find me because of my YouTube shorts, and they don't know what I'm all about. They don't know what I stand for, and I wanted to make a video describing what I do stand for. And first, I believe narcissism is on a spectrum. There are severe cases, and there are less severe cases. I also believe that nobody's perfect. Everyone has shortcomings, and everyone has defects. The thing to really pay attention to is a consistent pattern of people that have bad behaviors. That is really what we should be paying attention to. I also believe we're in an epidemic of emotional immaturity and narcissism as well, and there's a lot of people doing these kinds of behaviors. And I do want people to focus much more so on the behaviors than I want them to focus on the labels, because the behaviors will determine for us how we should respond anyway. It doesn't matter what someone's label is, if they're disrespecting us, mistreating us, gaslighting us, invalidating us, etc. It doesn't matter. We gotta do what's best for us, regardless of what their label is. Another thing to note, not everyone who is an abuser is a narcissist. There can be abusers that aren't narcissists. But again, that doesn't really matter either. But that's why I say it's the behaviors we should be paying attention to. And this is true for the narcissist and abusers themselves. It doesn't matter what their label is. The solutions for them will often be pretty similar. The only exceptions will be if they're going to need some sort of medication because maybe there's schizophrenia involved or a bipolar type 1 involved. There are comorbidities with that. Or there could even be ADHD comorbidities as well. But that's a different part of the issue here. But either way, behaviors are much more important than any label. And anyone can act out once. Anyone can mess up once. It's the consistent pattern of bad behaviors I want people to watch out for. And I've even come up with a diagnosis that I invented. This is not in the DSM, but I created a diagnosed a-hole because I think it's important to have a term for somebody that might not be as severe as a diagnosed narcissist or someone diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder, but it does show people, yeah, this person's an a-hole. But what is a diagnosed a-hole? A diagnosed a-hole is somebody that does one or more a-hole behaviors consistently. And what is an a-hole behavior? An a-hole behavior is someone who does something, or an a-hole behavior is a behavior that is either extremely selfish, rude or obnoxious, or extremely inconsiderate of others. And if you do one or more of a behavior that fits that criteria consistently, I would say you're a diagnosed a-hole. Examples of a-hole behaviors would be cheating, lying, exploiting others, etc. But I think it is useful to have that term. Even though I say it a little tongue-in-cheek, it is still useful to have that because not everyone who does bad things is a diagnosed narcissist. And that leads me into one of the one of the things people say about my content is they'll say, narcissism is just, the word narcissist is thrown around too much. And when they direct that at me, to me, they're trying to invalidate what I say and dismiss what I say. But is there some truth in general to that? Is the word narcissist thrown around too much? And perhaps it is. I think it might be used a little casually. But at the same point, I don't think it matters as much because, for one, not everyone who is an abuser is a narcissist, for one. People might be trying to call out a behavior or somebody that is abusive, and maybe they're not even a narcissist. Maybe they're just an abuser. That's possible. But the reason why I use the word narcissist so much is because it does a great job at describing a group of behaviors that a lot of people have experience with. And a lot of people can identify with all those kinds of behaviors that I talk about. My goal in talking about it, though, is to give people the awareness of toxic behaviors, whether it's a narcissist doing it or an abusive person doing it, or a diagnosed a-hole doing it. It doesn't matter though, because either way, we still gotta do what's best for us, regardless of what their label is. Again, I can't emphasize this behavior over labels thing enough, because that is what it comes down to. The word, when you throw around the word narcissist, it does lose a little bit of its impact, but because there are people who are severely NPD, and someone who's lower on the scale NPD, not quite as bad, but it is still bad. And then there's other people on a different scale, because they're abusers, and maybe they're not on the narcissistic scale as much. Maybe they just are a diagnosed a-hole and they hurt people. Those people can do lots of harm as well. You don't need to have full-blown NPD to cause lots of harm to somebody. But that being said, someone who is NPD, that is a unique way of causing harm as well. That's why it's not good to throw around the word too casually. Focus on the behaviors. That's what I say. And I mentioned the word narcissist because it does a great job at describing a group of behaviors that a lot of people identify with and have a lot of people have experience with it. And I'm super grateful for all the people that talked about it before me, because if they didn't use that word, I wouldn't have known what I was dealing with in my own life. It helped me put all the pieces of the puzzle together. And that's why when someone says to me, oh, the word narcissist is thrown around too much, or narcissism is so rare, or what are your credentials, I get annoyed by all of that, because all I'm doing is talking about toxic behaviors. Yes, people may use the word narcissist too casually, but at the end of the day, I'd rather have more people be aware of what narcissists do than not know what narcissists do and then continue to get exploited, manipulated, and abused. And if the price is a couple people use the word too much, so be it. But I don't want anyone diagnosing others with narcissism. I don't want people throwing around the word too willy-nilly. That's not what I want people to do. Again, behaviors are what I want people to focus on. And as far as the NPD is rare thing, some people will try to dismiss and invalidate others by saying that. And let's just say 5 or 6% of the population has NPD. That is one of the numbers I've seen throw out there. But it's hard to really know what the exact numbers are for various reasons, because a lot of them just aren't getting diagnosed either. That number is a guess. But let's say it's 5 to 6%. That is about 20 million people in America. And if each one of those people impacts about 5 people, that's 100 million people that are impacted by NPD. How rare is that? Many people, tens of millions, 100 million people, have experience dealing with someone like that. That's not rare. I learned that in Chelsea Brooke Cole's book, If Only I'd Known, who I have interviewed on this channel a couple times. Check those interviews out. But she's absolutely right. It's not that rare when you consider 100 million people have experience with it. And that's not even to say all of the people that are abusers, but not narcissists, or maybe diagnosed a-holes, or maybe just people that are emotionally immature and hurting people that way. There's lots of toxic behaviors out there, and I would say more people are impacted than they even know. So that, when people say to me, NPD is so rare, it's like, what are you even trying to accomplish with that? There's nothing to, why are you trying to get people, you're minimizing an issue when you do that. And like I said, 100 million people are probably impacted, but yet NPD is so rare. Give me a break with that. And as far as their credentials go, yeah, I went to school for Masters in Mental Health Counseling, but I'm not an LCSW or an LPC or a clinical psychologist, but I don't diagnose anyone either. I made up the diagnosis of diagnosed a-hole, kind of tongue-in-cheek, but I do think it's also a useful thing to have that, what do you call somebody that's not a full-blown narcissist, but maybe does some crappy behaviors. I think a diagnosed a-hole, or someone who does a-hole behaviors, is a good thing in the middle there. But that's just me. But I talk about toxic behaviors. I'm not diagnosing anyone. I don't want anyone to diagnose others either. That's not what I do here. I want to help people spread awareness about these toxic behaviors and then practice radical self-respect. That's what it's all about. And how do we practice radical self-respect in these areas? And I think for many, no contact will be the way. If someone can't respect our boundaries and they continue to mistreat us, what is left to do except go no contact? And depending on how severe the case is, though, I can see times in family where maybe you just don't see them that often, or you have sporadic contact with them. Maybe you don't need to cut them off, but it's totally up to you. If you think going no contact is the best thing to do, then by all means do it. I am all for what is the best thing for people. That goes for what they do health-wise, whether they take prescription medications or supplements or don't need either. I'm all for what helps you be the happiest and healthiest version of yourself. And that's how I see also how you view what happened to you in the past, the people who have harmed you, or the trauma you experienced. How do you look at that? My suggestion is look at it in a way that helps you to be the happiest and healthiest version of yourself today. To me, that's the radical self-respect way. Maybe not everyone agrees with that, but that's how I see it. And I don't see a better way to see it, honestly. I mean, what else would we do? Find a way to be miserable about it? I don't think that's really helpful. And that's not to invalidate, because, yeah, a lot of it can be really crappy. But at the same time, I want to be living my best life today. I don't want to let them rob me of my peace today. And I keep that in mind. And if maybe we had a narcissistic parent, it's helped me realizing maybe they just didn't realize, or they didn't have the awareness. And that's not an excuse. It's an explanation. And I think that is a good distinction to make. It doesn't excuse anything they did. It was still harmful. It's just helped me to live a better life today. It's helped me to be the happiest and healthiest version of myself today. And that's my goal for people. And honestly, if that's not your goal, to be the happiest and healthiest version of yourself, you're probably in the wrong place. Because part of practicing radical self-respect to me is that, becoming the happiest and healthiest version of yourself. What else? So I would say no contact is generally the right thing to do. In romantic relationships in particular, we don't need narcissistic friends, people that are going to mistreat us. I would recommend the longest leash in family. But again, if you need to cut somebody off, by all means do it. By all means do it. We do what is best for you here. That is really it. But what else? I would say, in regards to narcissism in general, can they get better? That's another question I get a lot. And I think if a narcissist can admit they have a problem, take accountability, and then take action steps to getting better and follow through, I do think it's possible they can modify their behavior. That being said, it is extremely rare, I think, for them to do so, because it's very difficult for them to take accountability and admit they have a problem. And if they can't do step one, they're not going to get too far. And either way, though, we shouldn't believe any talk. Believe actions. And again, if you were in a romantic relationship with one, chances are you should shut the door, keep moving forward, and go no contact. In a co-parenting situation, maybe that's not always possible, and you have to act accordingly in those situations. But I would be extremely hesitant to tell anyone, yeah, that person has probably changed. The person that was abusive towards you before probably didn't change, because most of them don't. I'm not saying it's impossible. I think it is possible if they can do the things I said, but I don't see that very often. And I don't know if I've heard any stories where someone was really treated poorly and they took them back, someone took them back, and it was much better the next time. I don't hear that very often. The only exception would be maybe, if someone was struggling with alcohol or drugs and they stopped doing alcohol or drugs. In some cases, their behavior can improve a lot. Now, maybe they weren't diagnosed narcissists. Maybe they were diagnosed a-holes, as I would say. But I have seen people improve in places like that. But notice there was lots of footwork there too. They're going to meetings. They're working with a sponsor. They're working on steps. They're becoming aware of their shortcomings and defects. They are learning how to take a step back and respond rather than react. But don't get it twisted. That is not the norm. Believe actions much more so than any words. And do I believe narcissists can change? I believe they can change their behaviors. It's possible to modify behaviors, but it's also very unlikely because they have to admit they have a problem, take accountability, and then do something about it and follow through. Often, they're going to, what I would call, jeb. They're going to justify and excuse their actions and then blame shift. That's an acronym yours truly has invented. JEB. If you hear justifications, excuses, or blame shifting, that tells you they are probably going to keep on doing those problematic behaviors again, and they're not changing, or they're not going to change. Things to keep in mind there too. But I think we've gone over a lot of good stuff in this video about my philosophy on things. And one more thing to note, every situation needs to be taken individually. When I make a video or I make a post, I'm speaking generally. There can always be exceptions, and every situation, if I heard your situation, maybe the post I made wouldn't apply to your situation. I don't know. But unless I'm going over a specific situation, I'm speaking generally. And there can be exceptions. There can be shades of gray. It's not always black and white. But these are things to keep in mind here too, because some people get upset. They have a specific scenario in mind. They run it through my post and they're like, uh-oh, that's not what happened to me. My experience is different. And this post must be wrong because my experience was different. It's like, no, your situation might be a little bit different. And your situation just might not apply in this case. But either way, when someone gets really upset about something like that, it's a good indicator they haven't really processed fully the event. And when they see something that kind of conflicts with something that they're struggling with, they can get upset. And I understand that because that's been me as well in the past. There's been times, and there probably will still be times in the future, where I see something and I can get annoyed if it's something I'm struggling with and I'm trying to find out the answers and get better with. I understand that. But just know, every situation needs to be taken individually. There can always be exceptions, and there's going to be some shades of gray. But this is also why I'm all for hearing specific scenarios, and I would go over them in videos, anonymously of course, but it's helpful to hear specific scenarios because then I don't have to speak generally. And when I can go over a specific scenario, I can give you my thoughts on how I would practice radical self-respect in that situation. And I think that not only would help the person who sends the question, but it would help everyone who watches the video. But we've gone over a lot of stuff here. My thoughts on narcissism. Can they change? Should you go no contact? Behaviors are more important than labels. Yes, the word narcissist can be thrown around a little casually sometimes, but NPD is not as rare as people might try to make it seem. And a lot of people are impacted by narcissism, so I don't want to hear it when people say things like that. Yeah, full-blown NPD, 5%. But even if that's all it is, they're still impacting tens of millions of people. And I'm going to keep on spreading the awareness about their behaviors because I would rather have people know about it and maybe throw the word around too casually than not know and get exploited, manipulated, and abused further. Because abusers and narcissists both, they take advantage fully of people that don't know their tactics. I would rather make sure that doesn't happen. And I don't want people to throw around the word narcissist too casually either, but I can't control what they do. People might do that, but even so, I'd rather have them do that than get exploited, manipulated, and abused. But again, I don't want people throwing around the word. I don't want people diagnosing others. That's not the point of this. The point of this is to develop self-awareness about toxic behaviors and then practice radical self-respect in your life accordingly. That's the purpose of this here. Nothing else. And someone does not have to be a full-blown narcissist to be an abuser. And either way, how we're treated by somebody, regardless of their label, will determine everything. I don't care what their label is. How do they treat you? Do they disrespect you? Do they mistreat you? Do they abuse you? That's what matters. The label doesn't matter. How they treat you matters. And I think I can't emphasize that point enough. But that's my video for today. That's a good baseline here of my philosophy. This video is already 20 minutes long here. And unfortunately, in this day and age, the clips and the reels, and the shorts, they're what get the eyeballs. The longer videos, not as much, unless you're doing an interview or something. But I hope people watch this just so they can get an idea of what my philosophy is and how I think. Because I think it's important for you to know where I'm coming from with my videos. And if you have any questions, of course, feel free to ask them. If you have specific scenarios you want me to go over, feel free to email them to me. And I'd be happy to do one-on-one sessions with people to help them practice radical self-respect in their lives. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Like the video if you liked it. Share this video with others that you think might benefit. And just comment below your thoughts on the video too. With that, thank you very much for watching and have a great rest of your day.